Hello, my friends. Welcome to Two Priests on the Patio podcast. Here we gather in the quiet space between science and soul with Reverend Canon Sue-Ann Ward and the Venerable Jeff Ward, partners in ministry and in life. We ask the deeper questions. What does it mean to be awake in this world? To suffer, to doubt, to believe, to begin again and again. This is a sanctuary for conversation. So come as you are. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Two Priests on the Patio. I'm Marville, and I have the wonderful pleasure of exploring some ideas in relation to the book Awakened Mind by Lisa Miller with two very, very extraordinary human beings who also happen to be priests, who also happen to be married, Sue-Ann and Jeff Ward. Hello.
Hello.
Oh. We're sort of in a new season, and we are in a new series, a new part of our podcast series. Today we are exploring some of Dr. Lisa Miller's work in the chapter, I think it's chapter 15, Awakened Connection, which is really about the discovery that we are connected and that we don't need to feel so isolated, that our minds and our hearts and our spirits are joined in ways that science is starting to discover. Brain scans, prayer studies, and healing stories are they're numerous and they are quantifiable, it sounds like. So we thought we would maybe start with that chapter today. Does that work for you all?
Sounds good.
Definitely.
What does it mean for you to when you think of awakened connection in relationship to Dr. Miller's work? What does it mean?
To me, it means being aware of our connectedness, that we are connected to each other, to other human beings, but we are also connected to everything else, every part of this beautiful planet, the solar system. It is all connected and held together by God's love. And so what impacts me impacts you, and what impacts you impacts me. And we need to take really good care of each other.
Do you think that that's part of the new role, I'm going to say new role of priest, to be more focused on that type of care? I mean, I know it's part of what you do in pastoral care, but we're talking about it more in a way that we never did before.
There is a greater emphasis on the connectedness because we are becoming more and more aware of the science related to that. I think there's always been scriptures that have told us that we are connected. We have passages that Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches, right? Implying that we are all connected to one another.
Oh, I love that.
But I think with quantum physics, there is a raised awareness. I think with the technology that we have that can connect us from one side of the planet to another and even into space, I think we're becoming more aware of it. We're learning about things like trees that can communicate with each other underground.
Yes.
And so, it's raised consciousness everywhere, and so certainly within the church.
Jeff?
I think what we're talking about is a great example of the fact that we as priests saw the parallel of this book with what we already believed to be true. So the science of this, we're here as two priests who are going to talk about God, but we're also going to be talking about the science. And so obviously we see that science is somehow, and Lisa is really good in capturing a lot of different science in this book, some that she was a part of, others that other people who did different studies were part of, all of which point in this direction. So now we are both also people of science as well as people of faith, so we're going to embrace this idea that both can coexist at the same time, that we see it as God creating the whole the whole that we're talking about,
Yes.
and that science is a way for us to discover how that works. And all that Lisa's been able to do through this book and through other teachings of hers and others is to illustrate, to demonstrate how all of that actually works, or at least that they can determine the evidence that it is working, regardless of, I think there's part of the chapter where there's a discussion about how maybe sometimes we don't always understand how things work.
Yes.
But
yes.
through the repetition of these testing and these different experiments, we can demonstrate that it does work.
Mm-hmm.
That there is not just a correlation, but a direct cause and effect.
You would think that it would be pretty obvious for us Christians too, though, because we are Trinitarian, right? We have the Creator, the Christ, and the Holy Spirit, three, and yet one God.
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
So it's that connection.
I'm just thinking for some of the listeners that I also call guest, like a guest, that maybe today's the first time they're listening to.
Are they going to phone in?
No, they're not phoning in yet. We'll do that at the, 2 more episodes, and then we'll do that. But I'm just wondering, for some who have not joined us before, do one of you want to talk just a little bit, take one step back, I'm thinking, and just explain the book a little bit more, like an overall, just a short summary of the book, just for the listeners who they're joining us now.
So Lisa Miller weaves together her own personal story of she and her husband seeking to become parents and having difficulty with that, and then ultimately being able to adopt a child and then have 2 other children biologically, and what that was like for her, and all of the synchronicities and,
Yes.
and connections that arose for her during that process. And she explores the psychology related to spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
and how spirituality is so critical to our well-being in terms of our mental health.
Yes.
And that she discovered this early on in her time as a psychiatrist, and
She sort of explores all the
and
different
then she
ways.
explores that, yes, and different ages and different people around the world, and really broadens that out.
And her hypothesis is really that it staves off depression and anxiety when you have a spiritual awareness.
Yes, and addiction.
An addiction, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like parts of the brain were thickened. In other words, they were made stronger, which then made people more resilient to things like anxiety and depression. I just love the fact that for someone who is not overly religious, she uses a really wonderful, beautiful language to describe how we're connected, how she was connected through this experience with the people who were doing the sweat lodge, and she was part of
Yes.
that process, and how that connected her to that community, which was much broader even than her experience there, and that all of those connections she was experiencing, feeling, and describing through her book, as Sue-Ann said, as she was going through all these challenges
Her own trauma
and rewards
around infertility.
Exactly.
And I mean, the unique story, or when she discovered that she was pregnant after they had already decided to adopt, and those 2 babies sort of arriving at the same time and having this connection.
I thought Sue-Ann was the only other person that I knew who was such someone who understood science and cared about it so much, who could describe things with the same kind of language. So Lisa was the next person I've heard who could talk that way as a scientist. So she can talk about all aspects of the physical science, of the biological science, but then to also say such beautiful things, like she's talking about this child they're adopting as their spirit child. Like that's not a typical science kind of way to describe that, right?
Right.
So her ability to see that in her life, and in things like she talks about encountering what I can only call as the sacred, when she's trying to determine, like she says, the sacred comes to her and says, do you want another kid? Are you ready for this? And for her to see it that way as a connection with the much bigger, and more sacred. Anyway, I found all of that to be very helpful for me as someone who can see science and faith held together. But she did it in such a beautiful way. So
I think she's kind of disarming, actually, in the sense that it is both a spiritual book and a science book, or a book that has evidence-based research in it. And you're so right, you're sort of weaving together or intricately this poetic spiritual language to describe scientific experiences. And then she's like a bridge, kind of saying, we're not that distant from one another in terms of expressing the language and understanding it. And I'm curious for both of you, coming from a science background and then turning your life over to faith, do you feel like you have to justify your faith with science? Do you feel like not that you have to justify, but you need to share that with others for people who are non-believers?
So I think some people create a dichotomy. For me, science tells me how things work, and my faith tells me why things work. So I think they're very complementary and really help me to experience everything more thoroughly.
In fairness, I would just say historically it was the church who created the dichotomy, right? The church wanted to say that some things are godly and other things are worldly.
Yes.
And I mean, that's why Galileo had such a tough time, because the church had a specific perspective that was based, they thought, biblically, and that was contrary to what Galileo was teaching. So the church created the dichotomy. What we, I think, can see, and you said it so beautifully, not only did she weave it all together, but then she does it with a personal narrative that makes it real for anybody, regardless of where you're coming from, whether you see it from a concrete world point of view, a scientific point of view, or a faith point of view.
So, oh gosh, now I want to go down very strange rabbit holes, and I'll try not to. I'm going to resist. But, so are you saying it's not the scripture that creates the dichotomy? It's the structure of the religion. Like when you say church, you mean the religion, not the scripture, correct?
People. It was people in the church.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And now we're going back far enough in time that it was when there was one Christian church.
Right.
So before Reformation.
Yes.
So it would be a pope who would say things, and then the rest of the Christian religion would follow that. Until, of course, it split to the east. And I only say that because there are certain perspectives of the Eastern Orthodox Church that are different from the Western Church.
Like?
Well, the way Sue-Ann was describing the Holy Trinity, for instance, is seen differently in the East. Not a lot, but a little. I mean, one of my favorite depictions of the Trinity is an Eastern Orthodox icon, which is described and is illustrated as these three presences of the holy in community together, right?
That's beautiful. In community together. It makes me also think about the reason the both of you are doing this podcast, and what you've talked to me so much about over the last couple of years is reaching out to people to help them feel like they're part of a community, reaching out to people specifically suffering and struggling with depression and anxiety and this sense of not belonging. What do you think the church's role, or your role, let's not speak of the church, but your role individually and together in creating that kind of belonging and community?
I think that's the essence of the good news, is that it is about community. And that's why we are called together as Christians to celebrate communion, right? To have a meal together where everyone is welcome at the table because of who they are, because they are all precious children of God. And so I think that is something that we all need as human beings. We need to feel that we belong. We need to be part of community. We were not meant to be solitary people.
Yes.
And our spirits are not healthy unless we have that connection. And our minds are not healthy unless we have that connection.
And if I might say that in a little bit different way, when we are experiencing, when we are offering church in a healthy way, everything we do is about community. So when we gather for worship, it's about community. It's not about just the rituals of walking through prayers, etc. It's about being in community, building community. When we do fellowship, it's about being and building community. So when we do that well and in a healthy way, anybody who comes in to experience that is going to feel a sense of belonging.
Well, the truth is also, or one of the many truths is that there are many people who struggle with their relationship with the church, or feel like they can't turn to the church because they've had negative experiences. How do you address that? If you have a chance, or let's say you're addressing it right now to someone listening is maybe they're struggling with loneliness and depression and anxiety and feeling like, I sort of want to pay attention to this podcast. I want to pursue spiritual ideas, but I don't trust the church.
And I have been hurt by the institutional church, right? But I don't think that's the church.
That's not the church.
The church is the people. The church is the people that come together to love God and to love neighbor. And I think that for those who are struggling with depression or anxiety, that the important thing is for us to reach out to others, to be altruistic. Because when we care for others, when we connect with others and build community, we feel better, right? We feel healthier and we become healthier.
We're seen.
I think many people have a justification for feeling the way you were describing. So whether it's we've just remembered again and tried to hold up and tried to build on reconciliation with indigenous people through the Truth and Reconciliation process. We're making progress. I was reminded again today that how we as non-Indigenous Western people see progress is very different than the way Indigenous people see progress. We want to be able to have a checklist. That's why we have these calls to action, so that we can check them off and say, yep, done, done, done.
We're not done, not done.
Right. So at least 77 of the 94 are not done. But I think the main point of difference is our Indigenous brothers and sisters see it as a process, not as an end. So who knows when we will get there. What's more important is that we are coming together in loving community to try to go forward in a way that will be healthy. But obviously, looking back, we as a church had a role to play in how people were badly treated and were injured, died. So I just say, yes, of course, you've got every good reason to feel that way. But I was listening to an Indigenous leader yesterday who was saying, but we have to work on what we're going to do going forward.
Right.
We remember the past, but we don't stay in the past. We figure out ways to go forward. And certainly Sue-Ann and I believe we wouldn't be doing the ministry we're doing if we honestly believed that we weren't being positively embracing people, helping people to feel a sense of community, help to feel belonging. I've met with people who have had horrible church experiences.
Yes.
And all I can tell them is, you are a beloved child of God. I love you. I love you for who you are. God loves you for who you are. Hopefully other people who call themselves followers of Christ, who are not maybe embracing that will learn to embrace that, because that reading the gospel makes it pretty straightforward. And one of the things that Lisa gets very quickly, and honestly, it is a golden rule through most of the major faith groups in the world. It's one of the reasons why as interfaith groups we get along, because we have the same one, which is simply, in the way Jesus puts it, is love your neighbor as yourself. If you just do that, then you are embracing the teachings of Jesus. And that's what we are always trying to exhibit and to encourage others to exhibit. If we do that well, people will feel a sense of belonging.
What if you don't know how to love yourself? How do you offer that out?
So I think we demonstrate love as community. So we show love. There's a beautiful, I guess it's a spiritual practice really, in this chapter of the book, where there's a group of young men who have gotten themselves into trouble and really don't love themselves, don't respect themselves, don't respect each other or much else. And they are gathered for this spiritual practice, and they are invited to open their hearts and to just experience love pouring into their hearts and filling them completely. And then when they feel just overflowing with the abundance of love, that they should choose somebody else in the group and just send them love.
Yeah.
And just pour their love out to that other person. And then they should, in their mind, imagine their best self, their truest self, their highest self. Not about what they've achieved or haven't achieved or done or haven't done, but just their best self. And imagine that self loving the self they are today.
Yes, yes.
And by doing that, they changed their lives. They became full instead of empty, and they became able to see others and to care for others and to turn their lives around.
And they talked about not being angry anymore, not feeling that anger anymore.
I don't want this to, I'm afraid this could come across as sounding defensive, but, and this may be obvious, but the men that Sue-Ann is describing had to actually say, yes, I will be part of that process. And I say the same thing to people who are not sure about the church or who maybe have been hurt by the church. The only way they'll ever be able to know whether they can be part of a community is to try being part of a community. They need to at least be open to that. And that's what these young men did. They were open to the process, to at least try the process. Then they found out it actually helped them. It actually served them. And it made for stronger individuals themselves, but also community. But you have to take a risk at times to say, I'm willing to try that. Maybe it didn't work in the past, or maybe I experienced something bad, but maybe there's a way for me to experience something that's very positive and loving.
Yes.
And so at least be open to trying that.
And that it's a process.
Yes.
And there was deep listening involved in that process, and creating space.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an experience that was so foreign to them, right?
Yes.
Like prior to them being involved, they would never have even dreamed of such a thing. And yet when it was offered to them as a way forward, they at least accepted trying. And once they tried it, they realized it really did work.
Mm-hmm. It seems though it's hard for us sometimes to value that kind of work because there's a lot of non-doing in it.
You mean just being?
Yeah, there's a lot of sitting.
And yet we're human beings.
It is so hard for us as people, especially in today's world, to accept the fact that just being is an important part of existing in our world.
And it's not just, it's being.
We see it as a critical part of being human is to allow ourselves to be, and especially be present with the sacred or be present in community.
Tell me, for the For those who are really cynical, about the science of this and this idea of, looking at brain scans and comparing them, is it not that we have the same operating system? And I'm not talking about AI operating system. I'm just talking about the original operating system.
You mean real intelligence?
Yes. So we mimic each other, and if we mimic each other's behavior, then that transcends, what is happening in our own mind. It's like we become mirrors of each other.
Mm. So I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Scientists are starting to understand that the basis for reality is consciousness. It's not stuff.
Yes.
Right? We always thought it was stuff, and if we can't see it, it doesn't exist. But that, in fact, the basis of reality is consciousness, and there is one mind, and we are all part of that. And there are certain things that we can do to help us to sync with each other and to come into the same wavelength with each other and really connect that way. Music does it, prayer does it.
Yeah.
And that's
meditation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How does prayer work in terms of multiple people praying together about the same thing, and then there being an outcome that is positive or healing, or there's a change in the person that you are praying for because multiple people are praying? Like, is that real to you?
So I think that there is a lot of science that supports the idea, the fact that when people are praying together, they sync up their wavelengths, right?
Their alpha wavelengths.
So there is more power when there is a group praying. There is a study with Hawaiian indigenous healers where they prayed for somebody who was in another space. So they weren't together. It was somebody that they knew, so they had some kind of connection, some kind of bond. But then they were to pray for them when they were separated at a distance and had no way of communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And they were told to send healing prayers for 2-minute intervals, and the intervals were random. And when they prayed for those people, 10 out of 11 times, their wavelengths synced with the others at the time when they were sending those healing intentions. I mean, that's just not chance.
Profound.
Right?
Yes.
So I don't understand how it works, but I believe that it does work.
Mm. Jeff, do you have another point on in of entry on that subject?
Well, Sue-Ann and I were actually discussing this, because we were not sure how effective that prayer is when people don't have some sort of emotional bond before they do that.
Right.
But we also don't have science that says it doesn't, and there is lots of anecdotal evidence that praying for people you don't even know has an impact. The one thing we are very confident about is that if you are praying for people even you don't know, that praying benefits you as a prayer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay. Let's unpack that just a little bit. Why is that good?
I think it's because you are intentionally connecting with somebody else and intentionally connecting with the divine at the same time. And you are sending love and positive energy out into the world and to that person. And so if you look at everything being held together by a flow of love, you are facilitating the flow of love. You know, and I think when we are negative, when we do things that we know we shouldn't do, we impede the flow of love.
Yes.
But I believe that prayer is something that really facilitates it, makes it stronger and more beautiful. And so there is more harmony in the world and more of what Christians might call the kingdom of God.
One of the things that science has demonstrated, and that Lisa talks about in her book, is that when we do things to benefit others, it benefits us.
Yes.
And another thing that she talks about which is, again, the golden rule of all these major faith groups, which is love your neighbor as yourself. So if you are praying for somebody else, you're doing both of those things. Oh. And what those tests demonstrated in people's brains was that it made people's brains healthier. It made them stronger and more resilient. So, whether it's benefiting someone at a distance or not, I will say this, even people that we don't have a bond with, who know that there is a group of people out there somewhere praying for them, benefits them. That we have seen evidence of. But the kind of rigorous testing that Lisa talks about, I'm not sure we've seen those kinds of tests done, but it's very possible that they have been done. One of the things I will say is that there have been certain tests done, or at least they're not even tests that were done. It was just data that was accumulated. So one of the things I've often told people about is on 9/11, there were systems in the world that were active, and they were measuring the energy of populations. And on that day when attacks were taking place, all of these different instruments all measured the same kind of energy, and it was all cumulative, all focused in one direction.
Really?
All at this event that was taking place on the other side of the world. So for that to have taken place, it does indicate that this energy that we are talking about, like Sue-Ann's talking about a flow of love, which is the perfect way to describe that, is flowing in that one direction. It's going to have an impact.
That's really fascinating. Although I guess the thing that comes to mind is there's so many painful events happening around the world. How do you flow the energy towards those events, right? But at the same time, I'm answering my own question, which is there are people there doing things that are not good things. So it's very hard to balance the two.
And we always need to remember there are also people doing good things.
And pray for those people, really.
Pray for them all.
Yes.
I'd just say that, as you put it, Shay, there's a lot happening all at the same time.
Yes.
And if one person is praying for, those people, whoever those people are, wherever they are, it may not have the same impact as millions of people praying for them at the same time, right? And so if there's a way for us to, orchestrate that, I think the impact will be greater. And I think that would be true, scientifically for anything. If there's a higher concentration of something, you're going to have more impact than if there's only a small piece doing that.
So how would you both define awakened connection for you, for each of you in your pastoral capacity in your separate communities? Because your communities are in the same geographical area, but they're not connected to one another. You both serve differently, different parishes.
So for me, it's about being intentional, about creating ways for people to connect. So some of the things that we're doing at the Church of the Incarnation are creating new spiritual practice opportunities. So we have a Wonder Walks ministry.
What's that?
Saturday mornings at 9:00. It's outdoor walking meditation.
Beautiful.
We walk in silence for a bit. We have a spiritual reading or a spiritual practice, and then we walk back chatting. We spend a lot of time in the woods looking at nature and just experiencing the beauty of God in each other. We are growing our ministry to seniors, because we know that there are a lot of seniors in our community that are very lonely, especially if they've lost a spouse or other close loved one. And so we're creating things like just conversation and coffee around current events. So that people can talk through some of the things that are going on in the world and, kind of see them as something that isn't just scary.
Yes. I love
just
that.
overwhelming.
Or not having anyone talk to you about it because
Yes.
you're living alone, and then much of what you're interacting with is online, if you are online. And a lot of older people may not be online. They might still be reading newspapers and reading books more than they are being involved in technology.
Yeah.
And for the people who are involved in technology, they may not be reading books and reading the newspaper very much. So there's a disconnect there.
We're actually more connected than you think, our two parishes, but
I don't want to assume.
we're not that far apart in community, but we have a lot of overlap in terms of people, and so that brings us connection. But we also are connected spiritually, and I think we do that intentionally as well as just in our normal practices. But we share a practice of meditation. Some of that is online because that's how people are able to connect because they don't either have time or the ability to travel or be present in person. We also are very big believers in sometimes people struggle with, meditation. So just sitting
Yes.
quietly and meditating. But other people are able to meditate in movement. And what Sue-Ann was describing was one way of doing that. Another is walking a labyrinth, right?
Yeah.
So it's a known path. It's not a maze. And so you don't have to concentrate on how do I get in and how do I get back out. But I just follow the path. While I am doing that, I am present to myself, but I'm also connected with the rest of my surroundings and the larger creation. And I can either be doing that walk as I would in quiet sitting meditation, in other words, not focusing on anything in particular, or I can focus on one thing as I walk that path and allow myself to let go of all kinds of other things, noise and life and all of those things, and allow the sacred to just be present with me. We're going to go back to the word of just being, right?
Yes,
Being in the moment and allowing the sacred to be present with us. And so those are ways that we do that. And by having multiple communities doing things like that, we are also connecting together spiritually.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It feels very intentional, which is what we're talking about, and it also is about something bigger than yourself, right?
And I think it's about also being open to what people need. Looking around ourselves, being aware and awake to who our neighbors are and what our neighbors want and need. So, for example, there's a group called the Super Ability Crew, which is a group of youth and adults. Some are on the spectrum, neurodivergent, and they get together for drumming circles and ukulele classes and other fun opportunities like indoor curling.
Oh, neat.
And we're expanding that out to include seniors and making things really intergenerational.
Yes.
And kind of raising everybody up through that opportunity. But that's because we were paying attention to the community and what the needs are.
And the social isolation that's increasing, right? That's lovely. I love that idea.
Churches, faith groups, initiated schools, hospitals, all sorts of forms of care and support. But for anybody who isn't even part of a church to do that, it doesn't mean that you cannot do things that will be helpful to other people. So, for instance, we do dinners for our neighbors on Kerr Street. We collect food drives, things that will benefit other people. So this altruism, this idea of loving your neighbor I realize for some people it's hard to say, oh yeah, I'm going to get up and go to church, say on a Sunday morning or whenever there might be a church service. But going out and helping your neighbors and going out and helping community, you don't have to make a major commitment. You can do it just once. You can do it for a few hours, but it will help them, but it will also help you, and it will help you to be part of a community and develop more of a sense of community. I know that in a world where so many people are spending far more time just being connected on their phones instead of with real people. When I say real people, I know there's real people at the other end of the messaging, but we don't really develop a real relationship that way as we would if we were in our own communities and we were with other people in our communities, helping people in our communities.
Yeah, and experiencing that physical belonging to each other.
Yes.
That's the piece I think that so many people are hungry for, because they may have 1,000 followers or whatever, and they may be connected on all the different platforms, but to touch someone, to have someone look at you with their eyes, look you in your eyes, to listen to someone's voice and know their voice without knowing their name, that's what so many people are missing right now.
And just
I
to
don't
get
want to
a hug.
diminish, by the way, here we are doing a podcast on platforms. So I'm not trying to diminish our ability to connect and communicate this way, but I think it can't be all we do. That's what I'm really trying to say.
For sure. And Sue-Ann, you were going to say?
People need a hug.
Yes, that's right. They need touch. They need touch. But I mean, but one of the reasons we didn't that we decided to do the podcast together was because it's also about building a community.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we're not doing it alone by ourselves.
Yes. And obviously we are hoping that, people will listen to this, that they will have thoughts, questions, they will reach out to us and ask us what we think about things, and we can continue to develop and evolve a community together.
Well, for our next episode, we're going to take a few questions before the episode, and then I'll ask them during the podcast. So, so we can keep, growing, not just in terms of what we're talking about in terms of the book, but what we're hearing back, the feedback we're hearing from I like to call our guest, our listeners, and so far we've been really hearing. We've released a few podcasts and bits and pieces, and the feedback has been very positive.
Our hope always was that it wouldn't just be a one-way thing where we just go out into the world and then that would be that.
We're now in, I guess it's fair to say, we're in a post-COVID world. No, post-pandemic world.
Yeah,
we still have COVID in different
in big numbers right now.
Yes, in different variants. So, but we are different. We are changed, and the role of the church is different. For you both, what's the biggest change in terms of what you do and how you go forward in a post-COVID world?
One of the things that COVID-19 brought us was live streaming our services. That's something that we hadn't done before that. So that brought about a significant change. And so we have both an in-person congregation and a virtual congregation when we have worship services. And it's also enabled us to do things like our meditation group online. Yes. So that's been a big change.
Just to elaborate on that meditation group, I mean, that group is global, right? So that's not something we would have been able to do before. I've just recently did a funeral, and most of the person's relatives are in a different part of the world. Mm-hmm. So they were able to actually participate in that and be part of that community in Oakville. So it made a lot. Meant a lot to them. Made a big difference for them, and it made a big difference for the people who were in Oakville to know that they were part of this much larger community of faith.
And is that what Awakened Connection is?
It's a way for us to experience awakened connection. Yes.
Mm.
When we are intentional about seeing each other and listening to each other and loving each other, that's awakened connection.
Yeah, and I think we talk about it spiritually, but we're people, we're humans, which means that there is going to be, Sue-Ann was talking about hugs, there needs to be a physical, or at least a physical presence, if not a physical touch or feeling. Certainly, Lisa talks about that in different ways, about how that love and that spirituality can flow empathically, but also physically, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And that we as humans need both.
That we need both. Well, we certainly need both of you.
Thank you. We need you too.
We need your guidance and your intelligence and and I think one of the things, I know one of the things I so appreciate about you both is your level of curiosity about how to reach people and bring them into the community and practice faith. So I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for what you're doing in building this, and I'm happy to be along on the ride.
We are so happy you're on this ride with us. Thank you.
My friends, until next time, we are going to be talking about chapter 16 and 17. We're going to be taking a few questions beforehand. Thank you for joining us for this very unique conversation. Two priests on a patio, although right now it's two priests in a podcast with a podcast host. Until next time, I want to wish you all well. Thank you, guys.
Two priests on the patio. Sure hope you enjoyed the show. If there's anything you want to know, just ask. Two priests on the patio. Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you for being with us. If this stirred something in you, share the episode and subscribe. The path of awakening isn't linear. It's layered, lived, and often lonely. But you are not alone. We'll meet you in the stillness, in our prayers. We'll meet you in the questions. And until next time, stay compassionate, stay open, stay awake.